on to Dr. Jina. Dr. Jina is a professor in United Kingdom.
Well, good day to everyone. Jai Sri Ram. Thank you for your introduction, Dr. Nagarajji. I'm not a polymath, I'm just a simple man. So what I plan to do today, and as I watched the last two presentations, I was kind of struggling to assess how I would follow Dr. Vishwanathji and then Dr. Anandaji. It just is quite a humbling experience to follow, but I shall endeavor to do my best. So moving on to begin, as has already been said by previous speakers, the Ramayana is an Indian story, but it has endured and traveled far and wide. And it actually holds so many millions enthralled. And whether we, see it as myth, faith, or fact, this story is not just a story. It's a story that tells about who we are as human beings. It gives us meaning. And Rama and Sita, as incarnations of the Hindu Devta and the Devi consort Vishnu and Lakshmi, inspire so much in us that leads us to dharma, purity, leadership, sacrifice. And then Hanuman obviously embodies devotion, selfless service, strength, and wisdom. Now, for me, being at home in England, the first place that I looked for Ramayana in an art form was in our museums in the UK. So I shall start there. And then I hope to end at another home that I've adopted from my ancestral roots in Saurashtra. So this is kind of a whistle-stop tour and a kind of potted history of 2,000 years right up to today. The Hoysala sculptures that Dr. Nagarajji mentioned, actually I was rather disappointed that in amongst my multiple visits to the temples there, I probably missed not capturing enough Ramayana from those panels. So I hope that some of the other things that I'm showing today will complement for that omission. Now, some personal and rather unscientific observations. As I said, these narratives still enthrall us, and they enthrall us in multiple forms, and we've already seen some beautiful examples of that today. And today, in the current era, not only the artistic traditions that have been discussed by previous speakers, but also temple building is playing a very important part. And I want to talk about one temple which most of the people here will not know about. Now, the other observation is that museums and private collections in the West, where I live, they seem to have huge hoards of Hindu religious material, but hardly any of it is ever on display. And when it is on display, it's rather obtusely described. Another thing which I've kind of learned from my travels is that the most striking in situ sculpture narratives are preserved in India are to be found in the South. And I think we all probably know the reasons for that as to the ravages in the North over the centuries. Next, what sculpture remains in situ elsewhere, is patchy and incomplete, desecration, vandalism, and sad to say, neglect being major culprits. Now, on the positive side, it's interesting and fascinating to observe that the most voluminous and refined Ramayana sculptures that I have seen that are still in situ are actually outside of India. And they also seem to be looked after the best. So with that, I want to go on to some of the stories that I have discovered in my travels. So when I looked at pictures that I've taken over the past 20 years of visiting museums through my catalogs, I was surprised that there was very little that I had actually on record. And then I had to go and dig into museums that I've been to. And I was quite disappointed at what they've actually catalogued and made public. Here's one. This is quite a pretty one from Bengal. dating the 17th or 18th century. And I think all of us will know what this narrative is. You know, it's about Ravana and the two Rakshasas in a combat engagement with Hanuman. This one is just look at the description. You know, it's catalogued under Persian portraits and Mughal style. I know the Mughals have brought many things to India, including Italy, but I didn't realize that along with Italy, they brought paintings of Ram and Lakshman. But there you go. Here's another interesting one from the British Museum. By the way, this one also has not been on display for I don't know how long. This is how they tell our stories. This is the description in the catalogue. It's perhaps a Ramayana subject. A seated woman is a large bird, and beside it, an indistinct woman standing next to a man. And it carries on, you know. It talks about a man with a bow who is pursuing some deer. And, you know, it's quite obtuse. Just look at it. This is how our stories are told by those that other us. And we know what these stories actually mean when we look at them from an emic view, as has been so beautifully illustrated by all the speakers so far. You know, whether it is in art form, in dance form, in lyrical form, or in painting or sculpture, all these works of art, they convey meaning of being. They celebrate life through artistic storytelling. They have messages of ancient wisdom and are of so much cultural significance to us today. These temples and these sculptures that I'm going to talk about are not just stone, they're not just material, and they're not idols. They actually convey the divinity of the devas, the tender emotions that are carved into their faces, the allure and the graces of the apsaras, the swans, the horses, the raw strength and power of elephants, of the Vanara army. You know, these are tapestries that express story and history. So, just briefly now turning to the Hoysala temples. As I said, you know, I was disappointed that I found rather few examples, and maybe I need to visit Hoysala temples again to make sure that I do a good job of it. I found a lot of other narrative panels in my collection of photographs, but not enough to make a full Hoysala story for today. So this particular mandir we shall start with is the Hoysaleshwara in Halebidu, built by Vishnuvardhana in the 12th century. And, you know, you can see the Ramayana stories in the friezes which surround the lower parts of the temples. Whether they are on a jagati or not, most of the larger temples have these, and there can be anything between 6 and 9, 10 bands. And usually one of those bands has got the narratives describing or depicting narratives from the epics. And it's beautiful that as the devotee takes a circumambulation, a parikrama around the mandir, they can actually observe at just about their eye level these stories, and above the eye levels, some of the larger murtis that depict the deities. This particular one I rather like. I'm sorry that I missed out a little bit on the right-hand side. This one is from Amrutapura in Karnataka again. This one is also sort of late 12th century. And here on the left-hand side, you can see Rama and Lakshmana. Sad that a bit of the Rama image is missing there, but they're actually mounted on a chariot and they're riding forth to challenge the Rakshasa in a panel which is further to the left, which is missing from this picture. In the center, we see a beautiful representation of Kumbhakarna. He is being awakened from his long slumber as a result of Brahma's curse that had been inflicted on him. And you can see the elephants and the Rakshasas, they're all, walking all over him. They're making a cacophony of sound with those musical instruments, even clubbing him to rouse him into action. And then on the right-hand side, you can see him roused, woken, fearsome, mace wielding, as he's marching into battle. And around him are the Rakshasas who have roused him into action. And actually, the Amritapura temple is replete with narratives from the epics, particularly the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And sadly, when I went there, our officials of the ASI were keen to throw us out because it was coming up to, 6 o'clock and past their shift. And it's quite a difficult place to get to, particularly when you want to try and make other temples as well. It's definitely worth a visit. This one is again from Halebidu. And I think all of us know this particular episode. It's a wonderful episode, isn't it? It's an episode that demonstrates strength, prowess, and the ability that Rama demonstrates to overcome obstacles. And this, in fact, is the episode that Rama, when Rama shot through that set of sal trees, assured Sugriva, which then led to Sugriva challenging his brother Vali to the battle. This one, was not directly related to the episodes that describe the Ramayana, is still related. You see that that huge, amazing sculpture, which is above eye level, of Ravana. Now, just looking at that, you can see the fearsome nature of Ravana attempting to lift up Mount Kailash. And right at the top of Mount Kailash are Shiva and Parvati. Ramana is Shiva's devotee, but his ego has got the better of him. It's unbounded. And he is attempting to shake the mountain because he has been refused entry. And Shiva, just with the press of his toe, is able to suppress Ravana in this picture. To be freed from the burden of this ego, Ravana then has to practice austerities and take the name of Shiva for an eon. And so this sculpture is depicting a message of how frail the human ego or the mind is, and how one needs to challenge oneself in ways to control and master the senses. Some more from Karnataka, Hampi. I think a lot of you will know of Hampi and will have visited it many times. And we all know the tragic story of Hampi. But the Hazararama temple is replete with so many sculptures depicting the Ramayana. Here's a wonderful one, Rama lifting and breaking the Shiv Dhanush at the Swayamvar. I think all of us know where Hampi is and its relationship to the story of the Ramayana, it being the location of Kishkinda, where the Vanaras lived under the leadership of Sugriva. Now, as the name suggests, Hazararama temple, there are loads and loads of panels depicting so many aspects of Ramayana stories, from Rama's birth to his youth, to his growing up, his exile, Sita's abduction, the battle of Lanka, and then the return to Ayodhya. Now, inside the temple are also soapstone pillars which have carvings of not just Rama, but also of his other incarnations. here are some more episodes from that same mandir as well. Now I want to move on to outside of India. Recently, I paid a visit to Sri Lanka, and while Sri Lanka has got very, very strong associations with Rama, it doesn't quite match the depiction of the Ramayana stories as well as some of the other countries like Cambodia, Thailand, and Indonesia. So I haven't got any things here that I plan to talk about with regard to Sri Lanka. I'll focus on Angkor Wat in Cambodia. This, again, is a 12th century temple built by Suryavarman II. And this is an interesting thing, which I'd not really thought about before. I found this particular picture in my collection, and then I remembered the national flag of Cambodia. Here's an amazing thing, isn't it? A country that is not Hindu uses a major structure that still exists in its borders, dilapidated but still revered, and it actually uses it as a symbol of their flag. How secular can that be? Okay, so here are some examples of the panels in this temple. We know, I think most of us know, that the Angkor Wat temple is the largest religious building in the world. And inside it, there are 8 bas-reliefs, either side of the 4 primary faces of the temple. And these bas-reliefs are really, truly monumental. They actually cover an area of 1,200 square meters. And each are housed in galleries on either side of the 4 principal doorways. And they measure up to 50 meters long, and they're between 2 and 4 meters wide. So the smallest one of these is 100 square meters. 100 square meters is 1,000 square feet. Not insubstantial. Now, amongst the narratives that are covered on these 8 large panels are the Ramayana, specifically the Battle of Kurukshetra from the Mahabharata, and the Samudra Manthan, which truly is a beautiful, beautiful piece of sculpture. And then there are other battle stories from the contemporary Khmer kings of the era. Now, in the Ramayana narrative, as depicted in this, the Vanara legions, which are engaged in the fierce battle against the Rakshasas, the Ravana armies, along with the horses, the lions, and the other animals, they are actually even more striking than the human figures. You know, just looking at these works of art, right? These bas-reliefs, you can spend days there, literally, and still not see everything. They are, quite frankly, breathtakingly beautiful. And it's amazing how wonderfully well preserved they are. Yes, the paint that had been applied to these paintings, to these sculptures, has come off with the passage of time. But they're still amazing, amazing pieces of work. And it's wonderful for humankind that, you know, being undercover, because these are in covered galleries all the way around the temple, and being far from iconoclastic desecration, you know, they are really well preserved. And, you know, every Ramayana devotee should really find time to go and visit them. They are an amazing way of infusing Rama's spirit into us. Now, through these narratives of Rama's exile and Rama's brother, Lakshman's brotherly fealty, Hanuman's exploits in his rescue mission to Lanka, and the quest for the Sanjeevani, all of these along with Sita's Agni Pariksha. These are all depicted. And one can spend, as I said, a lot of time looking for them and recollecting these stories. And it's wonderful that, the Khmer people at that time, the kings, had the time and patience to actually gather these stories, uh, projecting loyalty, wisdom, divinity, diplomacy, valor, strength, loyalty, courage, endurance, all these things that we associate with Ram, Sita, and Hanuman, which impact our daily lives. This is a close-up of Rama being carried on the shoulders by Hanuman as he enters into battle. Now, standing to his left are Lakshmana with a bow in hand and Vibhishana. And you can just see the amount of detail that had gone into this. And as I look at this and I reflect on this, I ask myself, what kind of artists did they have to produce this work? How many of them actually knew the Ramayana? They must have known the Ramayana. It's not something which a sculpture, a semi-skilled sculpture, or just a layman can do. This requires genius. This is a work of genius. On the other side, facing Rama, here we have Lakshmana, 20 hands, 20 arms, 10 heads, all going to battle. And you can see some of the remnants of the color that would have been put on these bas reliefs when they were first created. Looking away from the Ramayana panel, here's the details from another panel. This is the bas relief of the Samudra Manthan. And this, in fact, is the largest of the bas reliefs. It's 48 meters long and it's 4 meters tall. And this is a close-up of Hanuman. Hanuman is leading the Devtas in the Samudra Manthan here. And you can see so much detail in here. There's legions of mere mortals, and then there are the Devtas. There are even the fish in the Samudra. And challenging him on the other side, just observe how imaginatively the sculptures have come up with depicting Ravana with these 10 heads. Here's a picture that I found in my collection, which still intrigues me. And I wasn't sure, what it depicted. Is it the demise of Vali? And are the other Vanaras surrounding him, commiserating with him? What's the scene? It's just a curious one, which left me a little stumped. And I wasn't able to do my research to find out more. So perhaps some of the knowledgeable academics here can enlighten. Now, moving on to the 20th century, the Ramayana isn't just a relic in the Angkor Wat temple. It actually is a living thing. And in the 20th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, the pagoda, the silver pagoda, which is part of the royal palace in Phnom Penh, actually commissioned a work to depict the whole of the Ramayana, the Cambodian version of the Ramayana, which they interestingly call Ramakirti or Ramika. And this was painted right across the silver pagoda. It was created by a team of 40 artists. They took about 3 or 4 years to put it together. and it measures 3 meters tall, and it's 642 meters in length. It encircles the entire temple complex there within this royal palace. It's a stunning collection of murals which depict, as I said, the full story of the Cambodian version of the Ramayana. And when I went there some 9 years ago, they had just refurbished it, they had updated it, and it's a huge draw, and it's remarkable that this monumental work was commissioned during colonial times, right? In the 1900s, Cambodia was still under colonial rule. It was commissioned during colonial times. And here's the other amazing thing. It has withstood decades of ravages of political unrest. Shows the fortitude and the imagination of the Khmer people to appreciate this story as part of their culture. Is it also not remarkable, from an Indian perspective, that there is a symbiotic coexistence between the Buddhist religion, which is the predominant religion of Cambodia, and Hindu philosophy. And both of these play a part in the cultural life of Cambodia. Perhaps there are some lessons that Indians can learn from this. Now, as I said, this was an extensive restoration program which had been initiated in 2015. And the idea behind that was to bring back to their original vigor and vibrancy these works. And the magnitude of them, 600 plus meters in length, 3 meters tall. And these are all inspired by the bas-reliefs in the Angkor Wat temple. So you can see a living continuity between what was created 800, 900 years ago and what the Kampuchean people saw as relevant for their culture and for their identity, even in the 20th century. And even now, in today's world, they see it as an instrument of pride for them. Okay, so I want to move on to the 21st century, and we'll return to India. Yeah, we saw that there aren't many Ramayana sculptures well described in the UK, where I live. Returning to India, it's beautiful that the Ramayana tradition still remains strong, and it manifests itself in so many wonderful ways. The Ram Lila, the Ram Katha Pravachana, the beautiful dance and vocal and musical forms that have already been spoken about by other distinguished speakers today. Now, even in post-colonial non-Vaishnava temples, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this last part of my presentation, the Ramayana narratives have a distinct presence. And these are examples from a modern Gujarati mandir. And as I said, from home to home, so this is in Saurashtra. And so it's close to my adopted home that we use part-time in India that I'm going to talk about. And I mean, you can recognize some of the stories there, can't you? Yeah, the top one, I think, is Dasharatha's sacrifice, to be granted the boon of sons. And then the bottom one is the three mothers with their children. More graphics here. This one is the return to Ayodhya. I love these details. The bottom one is the more elongated detail, but the top one is a close-up, and I'll talk about the close-up. That is the battle between Bali and Sugriva, and the close-up in there, to the left of the two warring brothers, you see the cuts, the deep cuts in the sal trees that show the direction and the force of Rama's arrow. Now, zooming out and looking at the scene a bit more, you can see a lot more in that panel. Rama is seen there taking aim to shoot through the 7 sal trees. These demonstrate his strength and skill and his ability to overcome obstacles. This one here, Rama and Lakshman performing Shiva Puja in Kishkinda, with Hanuman, Sugriva, and the other Vanaras looking on. So, where is this temple? So this is one of the shots of the temple. It's a 21st century creation. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it. You can see here, just like the Hoysala example that I showed you from Hoysaleshwara, you can see the layers, the patterns, the elephants, the horses, and then the narratives interspersed with flowers and other decorations. So this is what is called the Khotaldam Mandir. It is in Rajkot district, Gujarat. And it is designed and architectured in the Mahameru Prasada Gujara style. And it was built by the Lewa Patel community. And it is actually in honor of their Kuladevi, Sri Kodiyarma or Kodalma. Just one of the many names by which Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati are known. And this temple is made from pink Rajasthani stone, and it measures 87 meters in length, 76 meters wide, and 48 meters tall. And Gujarat is very, very respectful of Somnath. Gujaratis fought a long battle to make Somnath a reality. I'm thinking of K.M. Munshi. And out of respect for Somnath Dada, this mandir has been built to be 3 meters lower than Somnath. And sadly, Somnath is a place which it's impossible to take cameras in, so it's not easy to show pictures of what Ramayana panels exist there, but we can make do with Khotaldam. The construction of this temple began in 2012, and the underground foundations and the overground Jagati are each just over 5 meters tall. So it's 5 meters below ground and then 5 meters above ground. And they allowed 3 years for these foundations to season and settle through the rains and the winters before proper building and construction of the mandir structure began. And all aspects were completed per the Agamas and the Shastras, and the Pran Pratishtha took place 8 years ago in 2017. 150 or thereabouts skilled craftsmen, Mukhias from Odisha, crafted 200 meters of epic panels, 600 main murtis, as well as all the other paraphernalia that goes into the construction of a temple, pillars, plinths, friezes, dwarpalas, toranas, ceilings, and all of this work was done in 3 years. And these skilled craftsmen, they lived with their families on site whilst this temple was constructed. In the narrative sections, there are 72 narrative panels, and they have between 1 and 4 episodes on each. And it's beautiful that 37 of these are Ramayana, 15 Mahabharata, and the remainder are from other Puranic stories. So just to talk a few more and show you a bit more, here's a beautiful panel depicting Hanuman when he discovers the secret location where Sita has been abducted to. And surrounding the two main characters there, Hanuman and Sita, you can see the other characters, the other companions on either side. companions of Sita, and you can see the scene of despair. And, the gesture of elation on Sita's expressions as she finds Hanuman in her presence. These are also wonderful. They show the strength and the power of Hanuman. Hanuman managed to get himself captured so that he could have a meeting with Ravana. And there we see in the top panel, Hanuman bound together and held to meet up with Ravana. And he uses that as a ploy to meet Ravana, and then he escapes after his tail has been set on fire, which we see on the bottom panel. And he flies off with his tail on fire, and he sets the whole of Lanka and burns it to the ground. On this panel, on the right, we see Hanuman is uprooting the entire mountain to get that Sanjeevani and lifting it off to help the ailing Lakshmana. The left-hand episode I wasn't able to locate. This shows my lack of knowledge, and I'd be delighted to hear people's explanations of that. It certainly looks like Rakshasas being vanquished, but it doesn't look specifically like Ravana, because there's another panel which actually shows the vanquishing of Ravana, which I'll come to in a moment. Which is this one. This is Ravana vanquished there in the top panel, you can see. And then the other panels on either side show events of Rama's return. So, to end, some thoughts. The Ramayana narratives still enthrall and delight us. They enthrall, educate the common Hindu, through modern media and through the beautiful renditions, that Anandaji showed us, and through the Kathakar traditions that Sri Vishwanathji talked about. And this is done in both the, if you like, the Sanskrit idiom as well as in local languages. So, people like Morari Bapu and Ramesh Bhai Oza, they promote the living tradition and the Kirtan tradition, the Katha tradition of Ramayana. And I've showed you just one example, one of the larger examples in Gujarat of temple building, which continue with the Ramayana tradition. At the end, the Kshetra, Devasthan, the Mandir, and indeed the Atma within are where Rama lives still. And the Ramayana narratives really reflect who we are. They describe and they define relationships and responsibilities, that life, all of us, are interconnected, and we are just part of this Prakriti. We are not owners, we are just custodians. And that the divine is expressed through the diversity within unity. Look at all the characters that we have in the Ramayana. We have the boatman, we have Sabri, we have the Vanaras who live in the forest, we have city dwellers, we have people in Lanka. This is Brahman. It's a boundless and timeless story. It continues to inform, inspire. It continues to inculcate love, loyalty, endurance, valor, courage, mental agility, divinity, diplomacy, and more. So, I'll just end with this. Perhaps along with all those things, let us also be inspired and learn from others. And the example of Cambodia is a good one. They happily celebrate Rama in both their sacred and their secular spaces. And perhaps Indians should not feel embarrassed to do the same. So with that, Dr. Nagarajji and the INDICA team and everyone who has taken time to attend today, my pranams and dhanyawad.
Thank you, Jayji. It was a very excellent presentation, proving the point that we have been making. This is connected to the presentation that we are going to have from Rudra Vikramji also. There is a history of living culture of Ramayana. There are two different aspects. Ramayana's living culture as it is today, and Ramayana being a living culture from several centuries, if not millennia. Uh, these talks by Dr. Jaiji and by Rudra Vikramji and another talk on the temple panels, I think by Jagannathji, all these have a historiographical implication. They show how Ramayana, being a living culture, is not a recent phenomenon. Actually, Rudra Vikramji keeps on taking this as his Purva Paksha, as the other side argument, because that argument was raised by Sheldon Pollock during his responses to the Rath Yatra. He started an argument that this whole Ramayana living culture tradition is only a recent phenomenon. The text of Ramayana did not have so much impact in the past centuries. But the talks by Jaiji and the talks that we are going to have from the other speakers like Rudra Vikramji are going to are establishing the historical uh, factuality of Ramayana being a living tradition. Without a living tradition, how would a sculptor sculpt so many panels in a temple so many centuries ago? And also, the sculpting itself, those sculptures itself is a living tradition because the temple goers also participate in watching those sculptures, talking about it, interpreting it, getting their experience from those sculptures. And if the architect and the patron king and the sculptor were considering the building of these panels as a part of the whole structure to be significant, then there must be some reason behind it. There must be some spirit behind building such panels. And that spirit itself is a living culture. The participation of all the temple goers, all the bhaktas visiting the temple, itself is a living participation in that culture from the time of Hoysala kings who patronized all these panels. And Jaiji took pains to take wonderful photographs. They are all high quality pictures. And there was an exquisite analysis from Jaiji. So now we move on to the next speaker. Let us check if there are any questions. Devika Jina ji is saying really insightful. Thanks, Dad. Jai Jina. So, oh, this is your daughter. Okay. Wonderful. So cute, so lovable. And Gururaj Joshi is saying it is about shooting arrow at Indrajit's neck. So there was a question by Jaiji whether it is Ravana's vanquishing or any other demon. So Gururaj Joshi ji is saying that it is about shooting arrow at Indrajit's neck.
Yeah, well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Guru Raj. And also, Devika, I must say one thing, I wasn't quite expecting her to be there, but it's lovely to see her there. I hope to find a picture of when my children were young, when they were, I think, 4, 5, and 6 or thereabouts, where they're dressed up. Their mother had dressed them up as Sita, Ram, and Lakshman for the you'd have a pageant, on the Ashtami of Navratri. This is a Gujarati tradition in Hindu temples in England. I wanted to get that picture, but I couldn't find it in time.
Thank you, Gururaj Joshi ji. Anjan Nandi ji is saying really glimpses of different pics elaborate the Rama as story of stories. Thanksgiving for highlighting more angles of observation. Jai sir, the more slides move, the more reflections of Ram offer to understand. These are comments, admiring comments to you, Jaiji. And yeah, that's all. There are some administrative questions like whether there is a Facebook streaming of this event or not. So thank you again, Jaiji, for such a wonderful talk with Hoysala presentations, which adds a completely new angle that you, Rudra Vikramji, and Jagannathji are going to cover. It is a history of the living culture of Ramayana being covered by these three speakers.